This podcast is brought to you in part by Coke, Buffalo Wild Wings, Southern Immediate Care, Guaranteed Labels, Central State Bank, Sunrise Docks, Banker's Bounty, Dr. Thomas Dudney, and the Green Monster Fishing Light. Now, back to Bubba on the Lake.
Hey, it's Bubba, hey, Bubba, Bubba on the lake. This is Bubba, hey, Bubba, Bubba on the lake. Yeah, he's got it going on. Gotta come and check this. Talking people, talking places from Bubba's perspective. This is Bubba, hey, Bubba on the lake. Hey, Bubba, yeah, Bubba on the lake. Let's go.
Bubba, this is Mike in South Carolina. You haven't taken any caller comments in a while, so let's get that going again. When you do the tailgate show, how about having a contest to pick the score of the big game of the week, and the winners get Bubba on the Lake merch? Enjoying the show. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, Betty, I was there. I was listening. I just wanted to say, me and my wife love the Betty and Bubba show, and want y'all to keep it up. We listen to every episode.
Hey, Bubba, please get Betty to tell us her favorite recipes and her favorite Amazon finds. That will be perfect for Betty say, what?
Hey, Bubba, this is Adam from Lincoln, Alabama. Hey, you was talking about the possibility of doing another pigskin roundup type show. How about doing a Facebook Live or maybe some format like that where you could actually be live and do it like it was in the old days, which was awesome, by the way. My girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, we used to sit and enjoy it, and that was our Friday nights. As boring as that may sound, we loved every minute of it. But thanks a lot, man. You're doing a great job. Appreciate it. Awesome show, awesome podcast, and I'm keeping up with everything that you do.
Hey, Bubba, this is Patrick from Birmingham. Been listening to you for 30 years. Just want to let you know I'm catching up on my podcast and listening to number 11. Really enjoyed the interview with Helmsy and Stuart, the tech guy. Keep it coming.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bubba on the Lake. Broadcasting from the Meliella studio, I am your semi-retired, mostly washed-up host, formerly of the Rick and Bubba Show, and I want to welcome you to the podcast. A lot going on, and you can check that out at BubbaOnTheLake.com. And, of course, we have the message line. You just heard those little pearls of wisdom coming from that. 308-BIG-LAKE. Feel free to call and leave a message. It may make it to air. Excuse me, a lot of comments there. We have been working on developing a sports show for the fall, the working name being the Tailgate Show. Just weird enough for me, of course. And we're having to jump over some hurdles. I'll tell you more about that later. There were several things I wanted to go into here, but we have a really great interview with Eli Gold, legendary broadcaster. I get a lot of questions about Eli because I work with him now at Jacksonville State, and we addressed a lot of those, talked about his past and the end with Alabama, what he's doing with Jacksonville State. Very interesting and informative, and I think it's something that you're going to enjoy. So we're going to save as much time as we can and go ahead and get into that because we ran a little long with that. And if we can come back and pick up some of these questions, we will do that. We do want to remind you to subscribe, turn on notifications. We don't want you to miss anything from the show. And also follow us and check the boxes on social media. We got to have that. That's the world we live in now. So anyway, thank you for being here at Bubba on the Lake. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with legendary broadcaster Eli Gold.
It's Bubba on the Lake. Bubba on the Lake.
A lot of life can happen between sips of Dasani. You know, the life moments, big and small, that are worth getting thirsty for. Like organizing a family movie night under the stars. Or hearing an old favorite song and having an impromptu dance party. Or finding a new dinner recipe that the whole family loves. The crisp, clean taste of Dasani was made for all of life's thirst-worthy moments. Dasani, because life happens between sips.
Illuminate your night fishing adventures with the ultimate in submersible fishing light technology. The Green Monster Fishing Light attracts bait fish and game fish in all water environments. Turn any dock into a vibrant feeding frenzy. Compact, tough, and energy efficient. The Green Monster Fishing Light will provide endless hours of family entertainment and enhanced nighttime visibility for safe docking. No dock, no problem. With our 24-inch portable Green Monster Fishing Light, start landing trophy fish tonight. Visit thegreenmonsterfishinglight.com.
Attention business owners, print buyers, and production managers. Guaranteed Labels is here to help you focus less on your printing, labels, and decals, and more on growing your business. Guaranteed Labels, your dependable printer for all types of industries. Quality, on-time shipments, and stock programs set us apart. If you're needing to focus less on your printing and more on your business, trust Guaranteed Labels. 800-741-7055 or GuaranteedLabels.com. Guaranteed Labels, still sticking since 1988.
Well, joining us on the podcast, we have a show-enough broadcasting legend. We've known him for a long time. We have an opportunity to work with him now at Jacksonville State. Please welcome Eli Gold. Eli, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. And what a treat to be on with the legendary Bill Bubba Bussey. It doesn't get a whole lot better than this.
You're too kind. You're too kind. Eli, you're the legend. And I know you've been interviewed 1,000 times and you've probably answered the same questions. But I do want to ask you and we'll kind of start where you started, because you know, you grew up in the Big Apple. That has to be unique in itself. But then to get into the broadcasting business there, that was kind of crazy. Tell us a little bit about growing up.
Well, growing up, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I lived there till I was 23 years old. I was not much of a student, so I really paid very little attention to class. And what I did do is pay attention to sports. I was not an athlete, was never going to be an athlete, but I did follow sports intently. I knew the batting averages. I knew the fielding percentages. I knew the goals against averages. I followed sports. So eventually I said, how can I make a living in sports without being an athlete? And the answer was broadcasting. I didn't need to know how to do mathematics, which were terrible for me. I mean, as I always tell people that fourth grade math were the 6 longest years of my life. So I had to do something that didn't require math. And I guess God gave me the ability to describe things as I saw them. And as a young man, at 15 and a half years old, I became a broadcaster in the Eastern Hockey League, the lowest rung of hockey's minor league ladder. If you got cut as a player from the Eastern League, you were going home. There was nowhere else to go. And I broadcast in that league. It was the league about which the movie Slapshot was made. And then I worked my way up just like any player did. And eventually, in 1977, I made it to the National Hockey League as the voice of the St. Louis Blues on TV, while the legendary Dan Kelly did the radio on KMOX. And that got me started. And one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. But that's what got me going. As a kid, I used to sell peanuts at Madison Square Garden. That was my way of getting in to see the games without having to pay my way in. And then I eventually became an office boy at Madison Square Garden. I delivered mail, I made copies, I ran errands, this kind of stuff. And eventually I got to where I am today on a podcast with Bubba.
Well, I don't know if that is the correct way to climb the ladder for sure, Eli. But when you showed up with these guys, even at the Eastern League, I mean, they're not going to just let you on the air. Did you do demo tapes? Did you practice? Did you sit in front of the games and record yourself, or how did you do it?
I practiced a lot. I went to the Garden, and in those days, the Rangers and the Knicks were not filling the place up. And as being an employee there, I was able to get in, and I'd go to the upper deck, sit in the corner, and practiced my play-by-play into my little tape recorder. That was the days when we had those little cassette tapes, and I had a little cassette recorder. Then during the spring and summer months, I would go to Yankee Stadium. In those days, the Dodgers and the Giants had already left. The Mets hadn't been born yet. So I went and sat in Yankee Stadium. You could get into the center field bleachers for 65 cents. You can get into the upper deck for $1.05, a little different than it is today. But I would go and sit in the farthest outfield seat, not near anybody, and I would practice my descriptive skills. I didn't know who the players were necessarily. I didn't have statistics. I didn't have notes. I just made names up, Jones and Johnson and Smith and what have you. And that's how I did the play-by-play. And it led to where I am today. But yeah, I practiced hundreds of games into my little tape recorder, basketball, hockey, and baseball.
Do you think a lot of the kids coming along now that want to do this for a living, and we deal with them at school, sometimes they have their aspirations too high too soon, that they're not willing to do things like that? Or do you run into a lot of them that are willing to work?
There are some, but most don't want to be involved in radio. They want that FaceTime on TV, and they just are not willing to put in the work. They're not willing to put in the time. Now, some are. I'm not making a blanket statement here. Some are. But for the majority, they'd rather, and they don't realize that even on TV, your face is only seen on the screen for a minute, minute and a quarter, minute and a half. That's about it. They just want to be on television. They do a lot of things. They call games like they're a comedian because they feel that's what's going to get them on SportsCenter. Well, I just never worried about that. I was a radio guy. As the old joke goes, I have a face for radio. But in all seriousness, I love the challenge of describing as opposed to putting a caption on the picture. And when this guy said, I don't want TV, and I don't want TV, and I don't want TV, Eli came in and swooped up those jobs. And I said, I'll take radio anytime. And that's how I got to where I am.
Well, I know you have a love for radio, much like myself and other people. You grew up listening to these great announcers on TV that you felt like you knew. And, and you wanted to be one of those guys. You wanted to be relatable. And I think if you get good on radio, the transition to TV is rather simple after that.
It is. It is. It's a different science. But yes, you tend to talk too much as a radio guy for a classic television telecast, but it's how you do it. And there's a relationship on radio that TV never gives you. The relationship with me when I was doing the Bama games for 36 years, the relationship that I had with the listener, it's nothing that you can replicate on television when you had Vern Lundquist doing one game and this guy doing the next game and this guy doing the next game. But when you're there every game, when you're a Vin Scully type in baseball or a Mel Allen type in baseball, when you're there every day, you're like that comfortable pair of shoes that the listener just loves. And TV can never replicate that. That's why I say that radio is a romantic medium. And that's a truly wonderful way to describe it. You build a relationship that can never be built like that on the TV side.
Eli, what all sports have you had the privilege of calling?
I've done everything but golf, Bubba. Seriously. I've done all the major sports. I've done, arena football. I've done horse racing. I've done auto racing. I've done so much. The only thing I really have not done, I've not done lacrosse, although I'm sure I could with its similarity to hockey. But the only sport I've not done is golf. And that's for two reasons. Number one, I've not been offered an opportunity. But even more so, I don't play golf. And I think that golf is one of the very few sports where you really have to have a working knowledge of the sport to broadcast it well. And I don't have that. But otherwise, you name the sport, I've done it. I have done it over the years.
Do you have a favorite or a least favorite?
Favorite would be pro hockey. I grew up as a hockey fan in New York. I broke into the business doing hockey. And that doesn't mean I don't love JSU football and hoops or Alabama when I did them. It doesn't mean anything other than my favorite is pro hockey. I just love the National Hockey League. I was in the NHL with both the St. Louis Blues and the Nashville Predators. I've done hockey for many years, and it's just my favorite. My least favorite is nothing. I enjoy every one. I truly enjoy working. I enjoy every sport. I enjoy whatever I am doing on that given day. I have no favorites other than hockey I love. But nowadays, if I'm doing hoops or football or volleyball, or I don't care what it is, when I'm doing it, that is my favorite. And that's what's worked well for me.
You know, Eli, you mentioned volleyball. I have to tell you, probably my dark horse sport that I enjoy hearing you do is volleyball. And you do that for us at Jacksonville State. You volunteered to do it when we were trying to put that together. And I really have got into watching volleyball more than I ever have. You do a good job with it, of course, like you do with everything else. But, you know, it is a lot of fun and a fast-paced sport, and you don't have to worry about rainouts.
You don't have to worry about the elements. That's exactly right. And they are so excited. The players, the coaches, the administration, they are so excited when you show interest in one of those Olympic sports that they can't do enough for you. You know, Coach Schroeder, Dex, is a great guy. The ladies who play are quick to answer your questions. I was far from a volleyball expert and still am far from that. But you can sit down with anybody and get straight answers, extensive answers. Same thing with bowling. You know, dealing with the coaching staff and the ladies at bowling. Not that I have ever done one of our bowling matches, but traveling with them, with Shannon and so on, they have taught me so much about bowling that I could go on the air right now and do a bowling match and not feel that I'm totally out of place. And that's what you get with you hate to say secondary sports, maybe non-revenue sports or what have you. You know what I mean? The non-football and basketball.
Outside the big three, yeah.
Yes, when you get that, they just love, they value you for being there to give them coverage, and they're great to work with.
As a broadcaster, is there something that you haven't done that you would like to do? What is on Eli's bucket list?
Yeah, I being a Yankee fan all my life, I'd love to do a Yankee game at Yankee Stadium. Not likely to happen. I'd love to do a Super Bowl. I've done lots of NFL games, over a dozen years worth of the NFL on radio. I'm not likely to get called to do a Super Bowl. So there are some things that realistically I won't get a chance to do. But, the bottom line is I really enjoy what I'm doing. I love what I do. And I couldn't be happier, Bubba. I really couldn't be happier.
Eli, talk to us a little bit. You've worked with a lot. You're a play-by-play guy, and you've worked with a lot of different color guys over the years. Tell us a little bit about what you look for in a color guy and what is something you don't really care for in a color guy. What makes a good broadcast partner for Eli Gold?
In a case of being a color guy, I realize that, assuming that the color guy is always a former player or a coach. For instance, at Alabama, I worked with Kenny Stabler, for a decade. Great Super Bowl winning quarterback. I worked with coaches, Wimp Sanderson. I've worked with so many different coaches, Bill Clark on the Jacksonville State telecasts. These guys have been there and done that. So what I do is I call the play and then I hush up. The fans I have no right, Bubba, I have no right to analyze a play when I've got Joe Namath sitting to my right, or Joe Namath and Kenny Stabler in the booth at the same time, or John Riggins, or Phil Savage, who was the GM of the Cleveland Browns. I have no right to analyze a play when those guys are in the booth with me. So I just go in, call the play, and then get out and let them share their expertise.
And then they have to hush up.
Some guys will talk too much, though. Some guys will talk too much, and that's the key. Kenny Stabler was so good at making his point and doing it in about 12 seconds, because that's what time he had. Because he had to shush up to allow me to set the next play, especially on radio, where you've got to say these two guys are wide right, these two guys are left. Yeah, you got this guy in the backfield, the quarterback's in the shotgun, or he's under center. Or you've got to set the play up because you are the eyes of the listener. So if an analyst goes too long, you're up the creek without a paddle. And Snake was really good. When the offensive team broke the huddle, he was done. And he had explained his point very, very clearly to people who were listening and hanging on every word that he had to say.
I don't know if people who just enjoy games have ever really paid attention to that, but there is a rhythm to that. And that color guy has got to hush to give you time to set the play before they snap the ball. And, now that we've been in this business a while, and I can hear and see guys from, they might be doing junior high football, or they may be doing, Sunday ticket for DirecTV or something, or, a big NFL game. But there's some guys who, these teams, they just have this great rhythm. And I even detect it more. I love listening to NFL games on the radio because those guys are so good, and they do that dance, and it's just a flow. And then there's other times you hear people that don't have that flow, and that's just, I guess it's a good feeling to you too, as the play-by-play guy, when you're dancing with a partner, so to speak, and you're both dancing to the same song.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I always assure them being the color analyst, they are the star of the show. I may end up getting more airtime than they, but they are the star of the show. And I mean that sincerely. You know, when you can hear from a Joe Namath or a Kenny Stabler or from whomever the athlete is, why the heck would I think anybody wants to hear me? So from the educational standpoint and the analysis standpoint, you know, I treat my color man like royalty because they are the ones who make or break a broadcast.
We're talking to legendary broadcaster Eli Gold. Eli, thank you for joining us on the podcast. We're going to take a quick break, come back. We want to talk about your time at Alabama, your health, what you're doing now, what's going on in college football. So we still got a lot to cover. Eli Gold is with us, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Bubba. Whoa. Bubba on the Lake.
You know one thing I love about Buffalo Wild Wings? You can get wings with any of their 26 sauces and dry rubs for takeout and delivery. That's like bringing an entire B-dubs home with you, which you can't do. I tried. I've knocked down so many walls, only to then be told to halt construction because I'm not zoned to be a sports bar. Kind of just looks like a big pergola or something because of the lack of walls. At least these 26 sauces and dry rubs are available to go. Buffalo Wild Wings. Let's go sports bar.
When you need urgent care, Southern Immediate Care is here for you. Illness doesn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule, so we offer support 7 days a week at convenient locations throughout Birmingham and Northeast Alabama, dedicated to serving all ages from children to adults. Southern Immediate Care offers occupational medicine services, including DOT physicals and testing. At Southern Immediate Care, your health is our top priority. Visit southernimmediatecare.com or call 205-409-2794.
I am so happy to announce that our family dentist, Dr. Thomas Dudney, has joined my podcast as a sponsor. My entire family have been patients of Dr. Dudney and his team for over 20 years. Now, I'm going to be telling you a lot more about all of his services and what he does, but I have to tell you, the veneers that he gave me changed my life. I had no idea how big an impact that would have. You can call him today at 205-663-6545 or visit them at thomasdudney.com and find out more.
Bubba on the Lake speaks through the air.
We're back, and we are joined by legendary broadcaster Eli Gold, who I have the pleasure of working with now at Jacksonville State University. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things going on there as we are still growing and moving into our new shoes with Division I, so to speak. Eli, tell us a little bit. You had a health scare a few years ago. Give us an update. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well, Bubba. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I was very, very sick. I had cancer. And I was, there were a couple of days where I was not far from leaving this earth. So I was very, very sick. But I had great doctors at UAB. I had great care at a nursing home that I stayed at. I really was in bad shape. And of course, my wife and daughter, who were my advocates. And you need one of those or two of those if you're ever hospitalized. Between all of those folks, I recovered. I reacted well to the chemotherapy. I didn't lose any hair to speak of. I didn't have much to lose anyway, but I didn't lose hair. And I had wonderful doctors. But yes, I was very, very sick with cancer. I lost about 140 or 150 pounds, which I had to lose. As you know, I'm a big boy. I lost that much weight. And then I have since put back about 50 of them because I looked sick. Even though I was healthy, people were so used to seeing me as a bigger guy, everybody was getting scared. So I put a little weight back on. But I am doing great. I have to go back in 2 weeks now. As you and I are talking here, I got to go back. I think it's the 1st of August I go back for a final set of scans, PET scan, CAT scan, this, that, and the other scan, all the blood work, what have you. And the doctor tells me that if I continue to be wonderful as I have been on all of these tests, that I won't have to come back for a year. And I feel great. My walking, my right leg is still a little bit funky. It recovered about, 85% or so. So I'm not running the marathon like I used to, which I never did, of course. But I still walk a little haltingly, but otherwise I am as healthy as can be. And of course, my line of work, as you understand, is a lot of sedentary work. So you're sitting courtside, you're sitting in the press box, you're sitting here, there, and the other way. So, you can go and talk to people, even if I'm traveling with the team and I'm talking, baseball with Coach Beezer, we'll sit down in the dugout and shoot the breeze so I don't necessarily have to stand and pressure myself. But I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. And I'll tell you, there's nothing like getting back to work. You know what else has really helped? And you'll understand this, but even more so on the sports side, doing all these games. And last year I did over 100 events for Jacksonville State between volleyball, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, talk shows, between all of that stuff.
Some radio in there too.
Yes, exactly. I'm always memorizing names and numbers. And that was never a problem for me, and it's still not a problem for me. But I am able to memorize things and then forget them very quickly after the game is done so you can prepare for the next one. And that is good. That's kept my mind very sharp. And thank God my voice was not affected by the cancer. So I still sound like I'm far younger than I really am. And, and here we are, we're working and having a great time. And I really don't plan to retire anytime soon. I really don't.
Well, Eli, I think I can speak for the athletic department. We're hoping you don't. And we're excited to have you there, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute too. You were the voice of the Crimson Tide from 88 to 24, right? Was that
it?
Whatever
that, 36 years. Yes, sir.
And that was during some of the most successful time the program has ever had, especially in the era of football that we're playing now. Tell us a little bit about what that was like being really the voice of the Crimson Tide and who everybody related to, because everybody knew you, they listened to you, and you were there at some of the biggest athletic moments in their life.
It was special. I will never say it was not. It was very, very special. And you're right. I was there during some of the absolute greatest moments in Alabama sports history. I was there from the first game I was there starting with the Bill Curry era. I was there through Gene Stallings in football, and when he won the national title with his team in '92. I did all sorts of great basketball when the Tide was coached by Wimp Sanderson and had great, great successes. They won more games in the SEC during that period than any team other than Kentucky. I was also, there was 17 years there in the middle where the team didn't win championships. So we had to put up with that. But, you do it the best you can, because these kids all deserve coverage. And then, of course, I was there from the first game of Nick Saban right through to the end of the Nick Saban era. And that is likely an era that will never be replicated at the University of Alabama or anywhere for that matter. So, yes, I saw greats. I made friends with some of the best players to ever play in the game. And I couldn't, I've had some legendary calls that thankfully I didn't screw up so they can live on, for years to come. So I have been blessed, Bubba. I really have been.
To say what was your favorite call is just unfair because you had to have 300 top calls, okay, with that kind of winning streak. But is there one that you were even shaking your head when it was over going, I cannot believe I just saw that?
I would have to say yes. The answer would have to be Tua to Devontae to win the national title against Georgia after Tua had just taken that terrible sack on the previous play. And you were down to no time. And here you come with, you go from we're fans, and we were lower than whale dung sitting there in the broadcast booth. I mean, we were down, and then seconds later, here comes this play to win the national championship. There were other great plays as well, but if I am limited to just one, it would have to be that. And then, I heard that play just the other day on something, and what amazed me was not so much that I made the call. It was, it was a good call, but I was amazed that I was able to sum everything up as soon as the play was over. It was this national title, and this did this, and for Nick Saban, it was this, and da-da-da-da-da. The only thing that people don't know about that call is that I ended my call, my voice was on an upward lilt. I said, Alabama, again, the champions of college football. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, and this goes through your mind in an instant. And I'm saying to myself while I'm sitting there, I said, you can't end the cut like that. It's going to sound like crapola when they play it in the future, when you end it with your voice going up like it got cut off or something. So I sat there and I ended it by saying, as a tribute to a former voice of the Crimson Tide, I said, how about that? And that's how the cut ends, with my voice heading in the right direction. And that former voice of the Crimson Tide, who was known for saying, how about that, on his years and years of New York Yankees baseball broadcasts, was Mel Allen. People don't know that Mel Allen was at one time a voice of the Crimson Tide. And all of this goes through your mind in like a split second. And I said, how about that? And that way the call sounded good and ended well. But, that was a great call. Obviously, Terrence Cody, the blocked field goal against Tennessee, that was huge. There were so many. Thomas Rham blocking that last-second field goal at Penn State back in 1989. That was spectacular. The win over Texas. And when Tom Stipe, our producer, and I collectively came up with the idea of what to say or what direction to go. If we said before the game that if we win, we've got to say something on the air that kind of wraps up history, because folks may not remember the day. You and I do, because we're a little bit older, but people don't realize that years ago, Southern college football was nothing like it is today. In those days, West Coast football was the big thing. That was the big thing. Well, then Bama goes out to the West Coast to play some Rose Bowl games, and the Tide wins. and they elevate Southern college football to where it is today. So Tom and I knew we wanted to do something to tie in the history of Bama going out to the Rose Bowl, winning those Rose Bowl games and establishing Southern football as a thing. And that's where that line of, and the roses in this grand old stadium are once again crimson, where that came from, hearkening back to the Tides winning the Rose Bowl games years back.
Eli, you probably knew Nick Saban as well as anybody. I know you have a lot of great Nick Saban stories. I think he was by far and away the best coach we've seen in college football. No offense to any of the legends, but doing it when he did it, how he did it, I don't think there's anything to compare it to. And, he was tough and he talked about the process. But was there anything else? Because there's a lot of other hard-nosed coaches, and there's a lot of other ones that believe in building a process. But what was it about Nick Saban that just was that missing piece that so many other coaches get close but don't have?
Boy, that's a great question. Other than the fact that the guy always worked. I mean, he was always, he's up at 5 a.m. He's still working at 11 o'clock at night. And he perfected the process of his. But he was so good at getting these kids to give more than they themselves even thought they had to give. He was just wonderful in dealing with people. I'd seen that, so often. And he was just, he had a good sense of humor, but he kept it well hidden at times. But it's starting to come out now on his, on the Home Depot College Game Day show. But he was, he kept that hidden a good bit. But he was just a wonderful man. If you didn't learn about life from Nick Saban, then you just weren't paying attention. And that to me was, you learned so much just by listening to him. And, me hosting the talk show as I did for all those years, every Thursday night, I learned so much about football, about life from Nick Saban that I'll never be able to, I'll remember it forever and never be able to understate what it meant to me.
Do you think, and many people do, that the out-of-control money situation in college football expedited his exit?
I can't speak for him, Bubba. I really don't speak for him. But that money has certainly changed the game and will change the game forever and ever. Amen. Now, whether that expedited anything or was the root of his departure, he's never told me that, and I can't speak for him. But it certainly has changed the game to a huge degree. And it, not just the NIL, but the transfer portal. Guys playing for 5 different schools in 5 different years. It's a free agency system. All that stuff probably had a little input, but, I can't speak for the coach. He never told me. And quite honestly, I never asked him. If he wanted me to know, he would have told me.
Eli, your time with Alabama came to an end in 24, and to a lot of people's surprise, a little abruptly.
Including my own,
yeah. You have handled this very well in the public, and but that can you talk any more about that now, or is there anything else you want to add to that?
There's nothing that we've held back, Bubba. The fact of the matter is, the university had the right to make a change. That's the ultimate bottom line here. I worked for a broadcast rights company Learfield, based out of Missouri. We all did. And they had a contract with the university, and the university had the say-so on who does their broadcasts. And I was able to stay there for 36 years, working for many different athletic directors. But ultimately, they had the right to make a change. I didn't agree with it, obviously. I don't know exactly what happened. I thought I was still doing a good job. But again, I had been out for a year and change with cancer. They felt it was time to make a change. And that's what the athletic director told me. He said, "We have chosen to go in a different direction." And I asked, "Well, what does that mean? Why?" "Well, we have just chosen to go in a different direction." And, you can't fight City Hall. I still don't know what, if anything, I did wrong. I don't know if somebody on the board of trustees was tired of me. I don't know. I really don't know. But the fact is, they had every right to get rid of me. My contract was up. They paid me every cent that I was due. And that was that. I was just terribly disappointed. My disappointment changed, though, 2 hours after Alabama cut me loose. They put out a press release, which in its own right was a different story because we had agreed on a press release, but they never did release that. They just put out a couple, 3 sentences, and it was clear somebody was ticked off at me, but I don't know what the deal was. But 2 hours after they put out that press release, my phone rang, and it was a gentleman that you know very well, Greg Seitz, the athletic director at Jacksonville State. And he and I have been friends for years. I knew Greg when he was a sports information director at JSU. I knew Greg when he helped out in the public relations department at Talladega Super Speedway during the race weekends. So he and I go back a long way. Phone rings 2 hours after I was cut loose by Bama. And he calls me, and as a friend, he says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Well, I've had better days, thank you." He says, "I hear you're looking for work." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, I'm looking for somebody." There was a young man there, and you can probably tell me his name, I have forgotten, but a young man who worked in the broadcasting division who had taken a job in West Georgia. He had left Jacksonville State and had moved to West Georgia at the same time. I mean, this happened like within a day of each other. And Greg called me and he said, "Hey," he said, I hear you're looking for work." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I need somebody for work." I said, "I'll take it." That was exactly the conversation. He said, "You don't know what it is." I said, "Does it have to do with broadcasting?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I'll take it." He said, "Don't you want to know what it pays?" I said, "I'm sure you'll be fair. We'll talk about that later." And we talked for another moment, literally for another minute. And as we're getting off the phone, I said, "Now, Greg," I said, "is this for real?" I said, "Did you just hire me? Did I just get work?" He said, "Yes." And a week and a day later, 8 days later, I'm on the air doing JSU baseball. And that became, everything that I'm doing now. The first thing I did when I got off the phone, with Greg Seitz was I picked up the phone again and I called Mike Paris, who, as he is known, the voice, and he has been the voice of JSU on radio for 20 some odd years. And I called Mike and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Eli, how you doing?" He commiserated. He had heard that I was let go by Bama. I said, "Yes, but listen, I need to tell you that I just signed on with Greg Seitz and JSU." And there was silence on the other end of the phone, as I expected. And I said, "But I want you to know that every bit of work that I'm going to do is on television. I am not coming after your job. I'm not here to spin you out." I said, "You are as secure as you ever were. That is your gig. I'm not taking it. I'm filling in for this guy who just left, and I am not taking over the radio at all." I said, "Please do not lose a second of sleep over this. I am doing whatever you're not doing because I don't spin people out of jobs. I've been around too long. I got a few too many years on me to worry about spinning people out of work." So I called Mike and told him all of that, and he was fine with it. And I've known Mike again. We're all in the same business. I'd known him for years, not well, but I'd known who he was. And we talked, and he was great. And as it turned out, he didn't necessarily want to do the call-in show. So I gave him, I told him, "Well, I'll do it." And he was great with that. And then there were times this year where I've needed to fill in for him on radio when there were conflicts between football and basketball and what have you. And the work just had to be done. So, for instance, when the basketball team got, snowed in out at Air Force Academy earlier this year,
yeah,
they couldn't get out. That was bizarre. And, well, that conflicted with him being in Daytona Beach doing a basketball tournament. He was out there with something, I forget, and however it worked, he couldn't get back from the Air Force Academy. And I went to Daytona, and I ended up doing a basketball tournament. And then there was another conflict with the football. No, that's what it was. It was a conflict with football. He was also in somewhere.
Air Force, I think. Yeah, got snowed in.
Yeah, whatever it was. And I ended up having to do the game at Louisiana Tech, the football game. And then I ended up with there were conflicts between football and men's hoops later in the year. And I ended up going to Daytona and doing the tournament in his place. But all of that, I called him. I cleared it with him, even though you and I talked a lot, and Greg Seitz and I, and Greg's my boss, technically, you and him. And I said, I want to make sure Mike's cool with this. So I handled things well, I thought, and I loved it. I loved doing radio, but I was just happy to be working. And I counted things up today, Bubba, between volleyball, men's and women's basketball, talk shows, baseball. I ended up doing 106 events for Jacksonville State last year, and I loved every last one of them. I loved every second of it.
You hear that number and it sounds incredible. And when I go and talk to groups, I tell them, I said, look, we do between 150 and 200 live events a year between football, between TV, radio, streaming. I mean, once the year starts, we got 2 or 3 events a week, and we have a lot of guys that work real hard behind the scenes on that. But we're so blessed to have Mike Paris, who's been there 40-something years, and we have a whole lot of other guys that fill in and do other things and do color. And I mean, we have an incredible stable of talent. And that's where I come in. It's just my job not to screw that up and be sure everybody gets where they need to be and got the equipment they need. And we're for a young, growing Division I team, I would put our broadcasters up against anybody.
Oh, I would, with no disrespect to anybody else and without patting ourselves on the back. We do put out a good broadcast. There are moments,
sure,
and a lot of what we do is to give training to students. A lot of times we'll have students running cameras at different sporting events. We'll have students working in the graphics department. We'll have this, and then you'll notice there are some mistakes. Of course, we all make mistakes.
Sure,
but some of the mistakes that might be of an elementary nature. But then you got to remember, you've got kids, you've got students learning, and that's part of the university. That's what a university is about, a learning environment. It's not just in the classroom. For these kids who want to get into TV and radio production, the Coliseum or the stadium or the soccer pitch or whatever, that's their classroom. So, we all learn together. We work together. I'll be honest, there are times where I would be disappointed in something that came up on the screen. And, I would say to you and what have you, but I would pull the kid aside, whether it was whatever student it was, male or female. I'd say, look, you got to listen. You got to do this. Here's this. Here. But that's because I want them to get better. I not only want our product to get better, but if you don't correct them, they're not going to know that they have screwed up. So, we're all in this together. We really are. And, I remember back when I was a kid getting helped by a lot of broadcasters who answered my questions, who responded to my mail requests, to my questionnaires, to all of that. I was a pain in the butt to these broadcasters, but they answered me and I learned. And now I'm trying to do the same thing for these young men and women at JSU.
Yeah, people are shocked when I tell them we have 2 full-time employees that work under me. Of course, we have all of the announcers, you and Mike and several others. But we have 20 students, I think this year we're going to have 26, 25 that work 20 hours a week in our athletic department. The majority of them are young ladies. I'd say probably about 2 to 1. And, we put them up on those camera stands and it's 100 degrees out there, wind blowing sometimes, dealing with the elements. It can be hot and then cold as the sun goes down. And, like I say, it's a learning experience, but they do such a good job and they're so eager to learn. And it fires me up.
Exactly. If they don't want to learn and if they push you aside, that's what ticks you off. But these kids are learning, and that's part of what I do. I'm not a teacher. I can't teach a class for, among other reasons, I don't have a college degree, so I can't teach a class for credit. But I'm happy to download my brain to any of these kids who has questions and needs to be directed in a certain way. I'm happy to do it.
Eli, thank you for taking time to talk with us. You've been very generous with your time. Enjoy your time off because it gets crazy again here pretty soon. We'll have volleyball, we'll have football starting, and we've got quite a lineup. And we're excited. Coach Charles Kelly, we got a brand new coach, and I'm excited about that. He's one of the nicest head coaches I've ever met. Now, he may grow out of it, Eli, but he has been so much fun to work with.
He's a great guy. I knew Charles when he was an assistant at Alabama. I knew him when he was an assistant at Auburn, but I worked with him when he was an assistant at Alabama, and he is an outstanding guy and has, he has a great track record. This will be, interestingly, his first head coaching job in college, but he has got such a background, has worked with some of the absolute best in the business, including Nick Saban. So, and again, as I said earlier, if you don't learn from Nick Saban, there's something wrong with you. And he learned from Nick Saban. So he's going to be an outstanding head coach at JSU. And I'm looking forward to a long relationship with him.
legendary broadcaster Eli Gold. Eli, thanks for taking time with us. I got about halfway through my list of questions. I hope we can do this again. And thank you for taking time to be with us. And we're looking forward to this next sports season being bigger and better than ever at Jacksonville State University.
Amen to that. And I'll talk to you soon, Bubba. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, Eli.
All right.
That is Eli Gold, legendary broadcaster, and we appreciate him joining us here on Bubba on the Lake. We'll be right back.
Where's Bubba?
I'll tell you where. He's on the lake.
Another staff meeting, another push for cross-selling, another awkward silence. Then Banker Bounty happened. The first referral platform made just for banks. One app that empowers every employee, not just your top producers, to bring in business. No more spreadsheets, no more silos, just clarity, culture, and actual growth in real time. Banker Bounty fixes more than your referral program. It fixes your momentum. Go to bankerbounty.com, watch the video, book your free demo. Banker Bounty. Create, manage, and track referrals in real time.
Just got that new boat? Let Sunrise Docks protect your investment with Swift Shield boat covers, Neptune boat lifts, and easy ports for your personal watercraft. Plus, they have composite decking that stays cool, designed with your feet in mind. Sunrise Docks is always first in quality, first in service, and first in customer satisfaction. Right off Highway 63, your Lake Martin headquarters, with 2 barges and the most experienced boat lift crew on the lake. Sunrise Docks is your lake life expert. Call 256-392-5200.
At Central State Bank, we believe community banking is more than just transactions. It's about relationships. For over 100 years, we've been helping neighbors grow, businesses thrive, and dreams become reality. Because when you bank local, you invest in your community. Central State Bank, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Visit us today or learn more at centralstatebank.com. Member FDIC.
Well, we're going to wrap it up right there. We thank Eli Gold, legendary broadcaster, for being with us and talking about such a variety of issues. I got about halfway through my list, so we're going to ask Eli to come back sometime and cover some more of that. But we do get to work with Eli, and if you miss him and miss hearing him on the Alabama broadcast, we welcome you to come over and listen to him at Jacksonville State University. As he told you, he does volleyball for us, he does football, he does baseball, and he fills in other sports when we have overlaps going on, and he's always been very workable in that. Of course, he does the Jack State Live and the Coach Charles Kelly Show, which we do live on Monday night at the Apothecary Draft House on the square in Jacksonville. So if you want to see Eli in action, come by. It's a great little venue to do that. Look, it's a very subdued atmosphere. I know when I signed on and they had already made the deal to go there, I thought, well, this is not a good place for a Baptist to go. But it's really a very calm situation, and it's an intimate environment to interact, and we welcome you to come out and do that. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate Josh and the folks there allowing us to do it. So, and if you can't get out, it's on a lot of the TV and radio stations that carry Jack State Sports, so check your local listings for that. But I do want to say, just real quickly too, we introduced a new feature to the Bubba on the Lake family this week, and that is Bubba on the Lake Radio. We've been playing with that as a streaming radio station, and we're still experimenting. We're trying to learn this system and what the capabilities are, but I basically have a bunch of songs that I like on there, and we hope that you will try that out and make it a choice for your listening entertainment. So we have that as a streaming option, which is live. And then we have, of course, the Bubba on the Lake podcast for on demand. So we're getting a whole family of media there together, and we appreciate all of you making it possible. Again, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications so you won't miss a thing. Follow us on all of our social media, and of course, everything is centered around the website, BubbaOnTheLake.com. The message line, 308-BIG-LAKE. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, thank you so much for being a part of all of this. And remember, being on the lake is not necessarily a location, but a state of mind. God bless. Talk to you next time.
You're listening to Bubba on the Lake.
Hit me bad.
A production of Intergalactic Pants and Tees.
All rights reserved. A lot of life can happen between sips of Dasani. You know, the life moments, big and small, that are worth getting thirsty for. Like organizing a family movie night under the stars. Or hearing an old favorite song and having an impromptu dance party. Or finding a new dinner recipe that the whole family loves. The crisp, clean taste of Dasani was made for all of life's thirst-worthy moments. Dasani, because life happens between sips.
This podcast is brought to you in part by Coke, Buffalo Wild Wings, Southern Immediate Care, Guaranteed Labels, Central State Bank, Sunrise Docks, Banker's Bounty, Dr. Thomas Dudney, and the Green Monster Fishing Light.
She's a hoot.